we can start on time. Thank you all for showing up on time. My name's Ernie Vance. If you could turn off your devices, I'd appreciate it. That would be awesome. I came in from Vancouver last night, and thank you for the nice weather. That was awesome. Better than we're having back in the West. I won't bore you with my details. If you go to my LinkedIn page, you can hear some of my background. I have some claim to fame of developing web forums and helping with the development of MLS.ca, for those who remember that, and RealtorLink. I was IT manager at the Fraser Valley Board for 16 years, and now I'm a consultant, of which the Barrie and District Association of Realtors is one of my clients. And I do work for boards across Canada in various ways, mostly MLS conversions, managing their third parties, and the third parties includes CREA, as well as others that you may be aware of. So we're going to jump in, unless there's any questions up front. This is a show and tell session. No test at the end. If you remember anything, you earn extra credits. Okay. So I kind of broke this up because it was not really, one focused type of effort on one issue or one system. I've broken this up into kind of what your workday is 7 days a week, and I'm trying to put it into an hour and a half. Okay? I'll answer questions as we go in case there's something that's burning. If it's something that's going to take a little bit too long to answer, we'll put it into the parking lot. We'll get to it either later as a group or individually. Feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn. We can do that as well. So the first thing I wanted to do was to sort of touch upon the marketing of yourself and where some of the systems that we've got for you and how we can set those up to be a little bit spiffier or a little bit more information or that kind of thing, or you can change stuff on your own. I'm going to have to sit down and go back and forth between the PowerPoint and the real world and that sort of stuff. So when Bonnie sets you up as a new member, you will first log in, and of course the system prompts you for a new password. And so this is your key dashboard for your computer systems. Welcome.
Thank you.
And we don't use the notifications thing yet, but we will be upgrading the Clarity system in a few months. I should have mentioned that my main client is Ortis, right? So the Ontario Regional system is, I service all of those 9 boards at the same time as I service Barrie. So one of the key common things that we have in common is this dashboard. So we customize it for each board to a point, but the main thing is that these smart links on the top row authenticate you through to these other systems, so that you don't have to keep putting your ID and password in every time. You can just click through directly into one of these things, one of these areas. And so when it comes to your profile, what I wanted to show you was when you click on My BDAR, you'll see this members area. How many of you are familiar with this? None? Close to none? Okay. So one of the things that we just added that you should be aware of that I'd like to point out is this, under members area, is something called Update Profile. Okay. So I'm logged in as one of the members, Catherine Johnson. Thank you, Catherine, if you're not here. And one of the key points is if you change your cell number, you can change it here. Okay. You'll see here on the right, you can change your cell number on the fly. You can change your email address if you change that. Those things, plus these languages, accreditation, specialties, those will all transfer to Matrix within 15 minutes. Okay, so you change it there, it goes to Matrix. And then from Matrix, it broadcasts out to the rest of the world outside of Matrix, which is your CREA Realtor.ca profile, any RETS feeds, third-party feeds that someone might get, say, from Remax or Royal LePage. Those are all broadcast out, so your email address is now sent out everywhere automatically. So you can do this on your own in your pajamas anytime you want. We are working on The languages, accreditations, and specialties, that should be any day now, but if you fill these in ahead of time, they will transfer as well within the next little while. The only other little thing is, if you're not aware, is you can find out your billing information as well through this page. Also, the other thing that we're just about to launch is that this portal will have an app that you can download. So again, if you're on the road on your phone, you can actually change your email address or your phone number, or check your status of your invoices and membership dues. So that'll be released in the next couple of weeks as well. The neat thing about this mobile app is, besides being able to contact another realtor or a broker, you'll be able to chat with each other. So if you're familiar with the chat either on Facebook or Skype or any one of those other things, you'll be able to do the same with this app that is coming down the tubes pretty quick. The other thing I wanted to show you is in regards to, after you've got your profile set up, is a lot of times listing agent does a CMA, right? How many of you guys do CMAs on a regular basis? Okay, so I may not be showing you anything too new, but as you know, you can do a search, and I'm just going to go into your favorite area called Barrie. You can do an initial search on whatever given neighborhood or area that you're interested in for your client. As a listing agent, you're working with the seller. The one thing I wanted to point out, if you're not familiar with it, is this thing called additional fields. If you look at the bottom left here. So if there's something specific that isn't on that search screen that your client has got or looking for, that you want to compare to, you can add it in to the search criteria. Now, I've already added on this days on market, which is the number of days a particular listing has been on the system. And maybe I'll point out that days on market is a field that's calculated at midnight of the time that the active listing has been on the market during that particular period in time. But it also tracks if a listing has gone on and off the market within the last 90 days. Okay, so that means that if somebody cancels and relists, the cumulative days on market field will continue accumulating, and then it'll reset itself for the next time that the listing goes active. So I'm not sure if pool type would be a normal thing, probably not. But I can add it to the right side and now add that into my search criteria. And then what you'll notice at the bottom is that there's a field here called pool type. So I can start narrowing down this 343 searches of active listings into different little categories, right? So I can make it more specific to the client. For the CMA purposes, though, of course, we can do active solds and expireds, which are common to try to come up with a price. You'll notice the default that we've got here is 0 to 180 days, right? So 6 months back is how far we're going to look for solds and expireds, which is fairly common. I'm going to narrow that down a little bit to 0 to 60 days. I haven't even given it a price yet. I probably should. So down to 679, but of course price is everything. So I'm going to look for less than 450, or some of you guys know this is minus 450. And I got 0.
450 then minus.
Thank you. See, I'm going to learn something. Okay, so 229 is probably too many, but I wanted to show you on this one-liner display a couple minor things. You can change with this drop-down how many it displays at one time. As you probably know, you can you can sort by just clicking on the link at the top. That works for anything that is kind of fixed in place, but if it's a multi-select type of field, the sort doesn't work too well. But I'm just going to pick a few. Oh, I know what I was going to show you as well. The other little thing I wanted to show you is anytime you see this icon that looks like a clock, how many of you guys are familiar with property history? Okay, that's good. Okay, so this is a key, I think, in helping coming up with a price, or even if you're on the buyer's agent side, coming up with an offer, is you can see the listing as it came on and off the market over since the beginning of time, right? In this case, the beginning of the MLS system here. So you can see that it's a particular listing anyway. It's become active, it got canceled, it went back active a day later, it canceled, and so on and so forth. So you can see kind of the pricing and how it changes, and who the listing agent was, and that sort of thing. So that's helpful for coming up with a price, but also on the when you're putting in an offer.
Sir, I didn't see how you got all that information.
Okay.
Oh, in the clock, I see.
Yeah.
Okay.
If I go, yeah, so there's just the clock, and you'll see the clock in the full detail as well as on this one-liner. Some of you probably know that I can move fields around by just clicking on the mouse pointer, that when it changes to a cross, I can move stuff around. So you can actually, make something that's unique to you, that you like on your layout. You can then save that by clicking on this and creating a new, you can actually create your own layouts and go back to those over and over again, right? So if you have something that you like in the way the order is, or if you don't like, you want to take out something, you remove a column. You can also insert columns, which is the same fields I was showing you with the additional fields, right, on the search side. So if I wanted to, say, add pool type into the mix, I can add that and it will show, right? And again, I can sort that.
Can you save that after you've added those columns and you
Yep,
a search?
absolutely. So the other little detail I think is just to be able to move, drag and drop things around when it's in that cross mode. And to save it, we click on this little icon here, which says Manage Display. And I can give it Ernie's, obviously you can call it anything you want, and then save. Right? So now I can come back and forth to that if I need to, right? I've got, on this particular one, I don't have too many, just a copy of days on market and then Ernie's single one.
Can I ask a question?
You bet.
Say you selected these four. I always struggle. If I want to take only these four to a different page and get rid of everything else, how can I do that?
That's a good question. I don't remember off the top of my head.
What did he ask?
Oh, about how to just show these four listings.
Yeah, you hit refine.
narrow.
You hit refine. Usually
Refine
does
and
it.
then narrow.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay.
I couldn't see that. Okay, so refine and narrow. This isn't obviously a practical CMA. I can save those to a new save search, a new auto email, or a speed bar shortcut. How many know about the speed bar shortcut? Anybody? Okay. Anytime you see up here in this top little box, it's called the speed bar shortcut. And so you can actually create your own speed bar shortcuts. So you want to come back and forth to this particular search and results, you can set it up by clicking on new speed bar shortcut, right?
So that's one with the question mark. Is it up there? Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Your backsplash won't take it.
Yeah. So that's my new shortcut. So if I am now on my home screen, the next time I log in, I ask for that shortcut, it will take me directly to that search criteria plus the results. So a nice little way to get from point A to point B. You guys might be familiar with export. I'm going to bounce around a little bit from my script.
Go ahead.
So one of the neat things about export is like it will take this data and that default member single line, but it'll also take Ernie's single line format that I just created with my new fields and my layout. It will export that into a file that you can use in Excel or any spreadsheet program. Now, why would I want to do that? Anybody got an idea? What's that? Stats? How about a mail merge? So one of the things that will be another class is an email merge. So you can actually download, create an email that has a template which uses all of those column fields in a way that it looks like it's custom to whoever, right? So I just showed that to one of the members just a few weeks ago here that wanted to do that, and wanted to send out, these nice little flyers, right? So you can create your own little realtor flyers with whatever graphics you want in your email, along with some of the details about these listings. So here's an address that in your neighborhood, for instance, that's for sale. Call me if you have any questions about it. That sort of thing, right? So that's the advanced class. We're not going to do that today. Let's see here. Just going to do that search real quick. I don't know if there's much else I'm going to show you with the CMA that you don't already know.
Or you can use a map, CMA, can't you? To buy map.
Yes, you can do a map search. Is that what you're referring to?
Yes.
Okay, yeah. So the question whether I couldn't also do a map search at the same time as choosing by those fields. I could also do a map search and narrow those down. I won't do that right now.
Okay.
Sure, lose everything I just did. One thing I was going to mention about the one-liners is that the next release of Matrix will allow you to also drag and drop the rows as opposed to just the columns, right? So we're just working on that. That should hopefully be released by June. So the Matrix system will then allow you to order it in a certain way. So not just filter, here's 4 in a random order. Or some sorted order, but you can also order them the way that you want to order them, which in some cases, if you're on a tour driving your car, you want it in a certain order.
I think you can do that now. We can map them.
Yes, you can map them, but this is for,
Your directions.
yes,
Yeah.
yes, when you go into that area, yeah,
Oh,
exactly.
okay.
Yeah. Okay, so I'm just going to choose a couple here. And go into CMA. Select a contact. I'm not going to select the contact because I'm logging in as Catherine. She probably won't appreciate it. So one of the things I'd recommend is when you go into the CMA is add all the very first time, right? So one of the tech tips today is just to do some of your homework ahead of time, set up your templates, set up your shortcuts maybe, all these different things that you can do ahead of time so that when it comes down to doing an ongoing basis, you can narrow down and save yourself some time or your, what have you. So what I was going to suggest is that you go through and take a look at all of these optional fields in the CMA and see how they look, what they look like, right? Sort of off topic of doing that is when you do the real CMA, you probably know that you can upload custom pages, right? So you can attach documents, which might be your resume or some other information, maybe a statistics package, whatever. You can add those in.
Is there a way to look at those pages individually without finishing it?
There is a preview.
I thought I tried that.
Um,
I have to finish it and then run
Yeah, I don't think so.
it. Okay.
Nope, I don't see that preview. So you'd have to go all the way to finish,
Great.
print the PDF, and then take a look at it and that kind of thing.
Okay.
You can view it.
When you view
You
it.
can go to view.
Yeah.
Yes.
What else was I going to say? Oh, I know. How many of you use the Matrix member portal? Anybody? The client portal?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so sort of on topic, but if you use the Matrix feature of creating your own website and your own client portal, you can actually customize it to your liking, right? So with your mugshot, with your colors and your logos and what have you. The next release of Matrix will carry forward those through into your CMA. So if you do set up, let's say, your company logo with your picture and your taglines and all that kind of stuff, that's going to carry through into the CMA. So you'll have an option to do that.
But any pages you upload won't have all those logos on it. Would they have a blank page so that you could take that blank page and put your resume on it so that it would match all the rest of the pages in the CMA?
Yeah, you might want to go into the upload custom pages. Is that what you're
Yeah,
thinking of?
But you know how they put a header and stuff on the CMA pages? And
Yes.
So would the custom pages have those on it?
No.
No.
These are, you'd have to create those on your own.
So I mean, it's too bad they wouldn't make a blank page.
It's not a bad idea.
That we could have with all that. So otherwise they look like they're an add-in on a CMA. They don't look like they're part of the package.
I will take a note of that and see if we can do something for you all. So I get to learn stuff too as we go. Okay, actually I have to go back a step, unfortunately. The one thing I forgot to show you, or mention to you, is when I showed you the MyBDR portal, which was the one where we were able to change our cell phone and our email address, I didn't mention about your mugshot, right, your headshot. So the quirky thing that we've got going on right now with MyBDR is you can change your email address, you can change your languages, you can change your cell number, but you can't change your picture, right? One of the things that we just fixed recently is I can change my picture under input. So under input is where you can change your picture. And unfortunately, it's only changed in Matrix, and it goes through to Korea, and it goes through to your client portal. It does not go yet back to MyBDR, okay? When I click on input, and I can search for myself, right? So in this case, Catherine Johnson. I do a search, and I can now change my photo. I'm going to change it on this one. Catherine is busy in other jurisdictions. And I click on photo, and now I can now change that or add to that or replace it with something else, right? And again, it's every 15 minutes from MyBDR to Matrix. It's every 90 minutes from Matrix up to Korea, up to Realtor.ca, right? But if you've got a third-party website provider, it's immediate, right? So it's automatically displays on their website. Yeah, so sorry, I forgot to mention that, but when it comes to your mugshot and your profile, you want to do it there. If you change your profile in here under My Matrix, My Information, this only applies to your client portal. So this doesn't go anywhere except your client portal, this particular area where you can change your header and footer, and you can change your CMA cover sheet, your email signature, and that agent web page. Okay, so going back to Matrix for a second. This speed bar, by the way, if you're looking for more ways of using it, is click on this help. The one way that I use it quite a bit is if I have an MLS number that comes out of the blue and I don't have an address, I just type in the MLS number there, and it will go ahead and find it. Right, so it's easy if you have an email that just has the MLS number and you don't want to type the address, you can just copy and paste it into the speed bar and away you go. One thing that Barrie and District, of course, is very serious about is the quality of the MLS, which, as you know, is important to everybody, not just your listing, but people who are looking at your listings, they want some quality to it. In the next week or so, they're releasing a system called Ben, which is the email notification. And at midnight every night, it will look and see if there's any breaking of rules, like for instance, self-promotion in the remarks, phone numbers in the remarks, if you've not put in a commission or no taxes or that sort of thing. Just giving you a heads up. Communications will send something out, but the email will go to you, the listing agent, and a CC to the broker, and it will just remind you that, hey, you don't have any photos on this listing, get it in PDQ, right? So, okay, so where was I? Oh yeah, listing agent, web forms. Everybody probably knows the little red WF that appears on the one-liners as well as on the listing detail. You can create a new web forms kit just by clicking on this button, and it'll send that through into web forms and begin the creation of the transaction kit. Everybody knows that one?
No.
Okay. Nice. It's a cute little shortcut. So let's see. This is.
So how does that function? I'm not understanding completely. So if it was listed before, is that your question?
Yeah, I do a listing agreement and the whole
Yeah.
web form.
Yeah, so
Before I do the listing.
one of the cool things about web forms now with Matrix is that the data is all of the data in the MLS, right? Before we went to Matrix, you only could put in a purchase of offer, right? So you can only do active listings, but now you can do new listing agreements based on a previous listing. So if it was sold or expired 5-10 years ago, you can use that as a basis to create your transaction kit. So again, you don't have to retype the address, the PIN, the roll number, and a few of the other details that are in the database. So this is new.
This is very new.
Is it the same like cloning a listing?
It's similar to cloning a listing, but it's putting it into a web forms kit,
Okay.
right? So as you probably know, forms are kind of the basis for everything that realtors do nowadays. And so you can start a new transaction as in a listing agreement contract, and it will set that up and start the whole kit. Now, one of the tech tips, if you will, is to create a template. I'm probably not logged into the right account, but one of the shortcuts that I'd recommend you do, again, it's homework, is to set up a listing template, web forms transaction kit for a new listing, and you might break it out into a new condo listing versus a farm versus a normal residential single family. So you have all of your forms in there that you need for that particular transaction. And you can even carry it through to the sales side, but what I do is usually break it down into the listing agent versus the buyer side. So you can put in the seller's checklist, the working with a realtor, you can put in your FinTrack forms, all of this into one. And now as soon as you have set up a template and put that into here, it will autofill all of those forms that it can with the information that it can.
Is it similar to going to Geo Warehouse to sort of populate a
Sort of, yeah. And we'll go into creating the new listing after we've created this kit. So there's some things you can do on Matrix to save yourself some time and effort as well. But this is just on the web form side.
Okay.
Okay, so you can see I can now add forms. One thing I should point out too is that now that you're on a regional MLS with currently 9 boards and almost 10, how many of you know that Mississauga is coming on to the Matrix system? Perfect. Okay, so you've got a much larger marketing area with a lot of sharing of data with realtors. If you are taking a listing, say from Oakville for argument's sake, you can call up that MLS number or that address without having to change boards or do anything special within web forms, right? But if you're taking a listing, let's say in southern Georgia Bay, then you do have to go to that board's area to grab their forms. Did you have a question? Oh.
No.
Okay, don't go there. Don't go there yet. We'll leave the controversy to. Okay. So this is the new version 5. I may go back and forth to version 4, the classic version. The one reason to go to version 5 that I can think of off the top of my head is that it's mobile friendly. Okay. So if you haven't tried version 5, you can now use it on your tablet and on your smartphone or whatever for those situations where you're out in the field and you need to look up a form or you need to send a client a form or what have you, or fill in a form. You can do that now from your mobile device. Version 4 wasn't designed for that. The unfortunate part is version 5 missed a couple features from version 4, so they are still going back and forth on that particular part. One of the things I wanted to point out, I'm going to have to go back to version 4. So they have this category, and unfortunately it's grayed out for some reason. Okay, looks like I have to switch to the Ontario group of forms. If you see something in web forms that needs correcting, send it to the Barrie office, and then we'll package it up and send it off to the CREA and the web forms team. So if you see something quirky, either as a programming thing or just on the contract itself or what have you, send it in and we'll organize it. Web forms is kind of based on 4 levels. We have a national level of forms, which are the FinTrack forms, the provincial forms, which are managed by OREA, Ontario Association. They also manage the recommended clauses and phrases. And then you have the board level can have their own forms. In this case, it is the data input form. But Barrie can have their own special forms if they want. They used to have a waterfront form, for instance, that was special to Barrie. They can do other things too, such as, what's it called, where you're conveying your commission to your client. I can't remember what they call that, but there's a form a special that they can do. And again, they get it programmed up to do certain things. The other layer is the broker or office can have their forms. I don't know how many of you know that, but it's if you have a conveyancing form, for instance, you use Lone Wolf and you have a special form, you can have that added into web forms, and you can tell web forms to do the calculations for the conveyancing. Okay, so not only automatically flow in the address and the price and all that kind of neat stuff, you can actually get it to do the calculations, and then the realtor can submit that into the conveyancer, and Bob's your uncle, you get paid, hopefully. I sort of went off topic there, but I chose the organization Ontario. You'll see in the right here, another bug. Let's see, I'm going to go back to version 4. Sorry. The shortcut to web forms is webforms.ca. How many of you guys know that? Okay. If you're ever caught and you can't get into Realtor Link or through that smart link that we were talking about earlier, you can go to webforms.ca. The way the structure is that CREA owns the intellectual property rights to web forms, but the Fraser Valley Real Estate Board still maintains and supports it, and they support it on a different system or different server than the rest of Realtor.ca. I know it's a long story. I don't go there.
Okay, don't go.
Do you know what our board wants us to do, whether they want us to use Korea, OREA, or where are we specifically to go so that we'll be consistent with the forms we're using?
Say that again?
Well, you can get the forms through different venues. Right? You can get them through the Barrie board, you can get them through Korea, you can get them through OREA.
Well, we're talking about web forms, and those all kind of merged into the Barrie display.
To get them through the, I'm just wondering if we're going to simplify it and just have sort of one place to get the web forms.
Oh, you mean in like a domain name, like where I just confused you by telling you about webforms.ca? That part? Are you talking about that part?
Yeah.
Oh, clauses. Yeah, that's a whole other can of fish. Yeah, I'm going to touch upon the clauses and phrases just after we do the listing transaction kit. We're going to show you where that is and how you can change your own or make your own, or the broker can make their own, the same levels we were talking about earlier. Yeah, some days real estate is confusing.
Well, you work in Ontario, so you should be using Ontario clause.
Well, they're the ones that have been vetted by a lawyer, but there aren't. Some lawyers obviously have some different opinions. So I know in the West, the Victoria Board has a whole set of modified BC clauses, and including forms that they prefer to use. And they recommend highly that the local Victoria Realtor not use the provincial forms. So I'm only the conveyor of messages. So unfortunately, that's the way it is. Yeah, so I'm going to go back. How many of you tried version 5, by the way? Okay. Any feedback? Looks prettier.
Got the clauses on the pages.
Yep.
You can't edit.
Ah.
So I switched back to the classic version.
That's very important.
I'll make a note of that. I know when it comes to the design when we first did it, and like I say, this is version 5, and I've been working on it since version 1, the clauses and phrases has always been a bit of a bugaboo, trying to make it as flexible and that as possible, and we still haven't figured that out. So I'm going to add remove forms because I didn't get a chance to add that for the sellers. Version 4 compared to version 5 has this search list for, right? So I can look for a particular word and it will start giving me the option for any of the forms that have that in the name of it. That also allows me to view by different types, residential sales, for instance, and then it gives me only those forms that are related to that particular type of transaction, right? So it slices and dices it a couple of different ways. Okay, so I'm going to go for 200. I'm going to add that one. I'm going to look for Ontario, see if that one comes up. So we've got those two, and we'll save changes to the transaction kit. But like I say, if you spend some time up front with your homework and create these templates, you'll find it's a lot easier subsequently with having to think about what has to be done. So you can perfect it after hours, and then when you actually have a client in front of you, you can really look kind of professional, like you are.
You hesitated.
One little detail here. Now I don't have many. Let me see if this is better. Let's see. I did have. Anyway, I don't have too many that are large. The average number of forms in a transaction altogether is 11, as if that was some trivia that you needed to know. 7 for a completed transaction. But if you see my mouse cursor change to that cross, just like you saw in Matrix, I can rearrange these into a different order, right? So I can prioritize them into the order that I want my client or somebody to receive. So, for instance, you might have working with a real estate agent, you might have seller's checklist at the top, and then get into the fin track, et cetera, et cetera. So you can actually rearrange the order.
Is there any particular order that feeds one form, feeds the other one better?
No, actually. In fact, that's a good question. That's a good segue into what I was just going to show you. The system knows enough about what data to bring down from the database. It also knows for the majority of the bigger fields or the more important fields what flows from one form to the other, right? So it's kind of two steps. The first step is you give it an MLS number, an address, it autofills what it can, right? And now you're on to the next step. So if I change, for instance, the address here, because it's right or wrong or whatever, that will flow through to any of the other forms in the transaction kit, right? The same with the price.
Or if you change that address somewhere else, it'll flow back to here.
Exactly, yeah.
So it's cross.
Yeah, they call them flow fields, which was the biggest technical term I could come up with at the time.
So if you change
So because you've
information
got
on
two
one,
hundred, you've got
it'll
Form
flow
200 on the
through.
Right.
board, you're suggesting, or you're just using this as an example, you're suggesting that we start with 200, so that we will have a full field?
No, any of the forms in web forms have flow fields that go back and forth, right? And then again, if you see one that you think that should work a certain way and it's not, then again, email the board and we'll see if we can get that fixed, right? Because the board has got some influence on the web forms, they can, make some adjustments and tweak things certain ways.
Well, I'm looking at carrying them through numerical value, so that you start with the lowest number, like Form 200, and then you're going to, the next form, numerical.
Oh, yeah, the Ontario Real Estate Association's numbering scheme, you mean? Or, yeah, that's their numbering scheme. Yeah. I don't know why they came up with that numbering series. I have no idea. But that's how they
But no relevance to the flow.
no, not the data flow. You probably already have seen this. So when I type in the dollar amount, it creates the English version, if you will. I don't think there was anything else on this form that I wanted to show you. I just wanted to take you over now to the residential form. And so we changed the street to Avenue, and we can see that there's a bug there. It didn't flow through, but the address is there. The city is there, and so on. So these are all pre-filled for you, flowed from the download. So you don't have to retype this. You can embellish it and so on. One of the things we're working on that you should be aware of is something called Realtor Load. And unfortunately, I can't demo it to you today. I was really hoping to. But one of the things that I think you might like is once you've filled out your contract and your listing form, when you go back to web forms, there will be a feature to load it back into Matrix automatically. Right? Now, it doesn't have to be a completed listing. It'll come into Matrix as a incomplete or incoming listing, in which case you go into your My Matrix and you can edit it and finish it off, attach photos, and open houses if necessary, and save it as active, and then that'll flow automatically through to the rest of the systems, right? Now, that was supposed to be released this spring, but I'm not making any promises today because we've actually had a little bit of a glitch with the new data input form that they just released that kind of set us back a little bit. But if you're an office assistant who does some data entry, this feature, will help everything along quite quickly, right? So you don't have to do the double entry and all that kind of neat stuff.
So Ernie, the changes I made to the form, one of them was changing it from roof to shingles,
Oh, yeah?
but it shows, input form shows shingles, and you print it out, it still says roof.
Nice. I'll make a note of that. Yeah, I must compliment the Barrie and District Board because you guys have come up with more bugs than the other 8 boards in 2 years. It's crazy. It's like Agnes just showed me another one today. I'm like, hang on a minute, nobody pointed that out before. I will make a note of that and see if we can get that fixed. What else can I show you? We are working on that the copy and paste works, so you could technically take something that you've done elsewhere and copy and paste it into comments. Not recommended, but you could, copy and paste the other guy's comments and embellish those, but we wouldn't go there. Not that I haven't seen that before. No, I've never seen that Oh yeah, and the FinTrack form, I'm sure this isn't ever done. I did a broker's technology review a few years ago, and he had that FinTrack form was pretty cool because it had the client's birth date on there, right? So he would put that into his contact so he could send a birthday email. But nobody will do that either. So I'm not recommending these things, I'm just saying. So as you know, if you don't finish the mandatory fields, web forms will complain. I am trying to get them to change this, these little buttons around so you don't press cancel to continue. You press continue to continue. We're working on it. What else? Okay. Okay, we already talked about creating templates. We probably already know we can copy from an existing kit, right? So if we copy from an existing kit, this can also be handy if you've got a lot of clauses and phrases that you want. You can actually set up a dummy, a fake client, right? And have those clauses and phrases in the template so that you can copy those forward over and over again.
Use that as a master kind of.
Exactly, yeah. So that's another option for you.
One question.
Yes, question?
I'm on 3 boards, so it's I'm doing form after form after form. And on the Southern Georgian Bay board, we're able to now, there's a little shortcut that we have, I don't know if you're gonna bring this up here, but instead of doing the data form, we can actually get the listing started on Matrix, and then there's a tab that says get your client's signature, and it actually prints up. So instead of doing that whole form that you just did, we can do it on an actual listing form. It's going to look like you're printing out that form there, and at the bottom it says get their
We have
signature.
that.
Oh, we do have it.
You just go to
Okay.
print. It's in the
So
print choice.
instead of doing that data form, we're allowed to use this. Is that something we're allowed to use for this board as well?
What's your definition of allowed?
Well, our board said, when we did the course, our board said that we don't have to use that Ontario regional form. We can use this and take it to our client to sign.
Yeah, no, that's okay.
That's okay.
Okay in Ortis, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, definitely. That's one of the features that I don't
Just-
think you had before with Fusion.
No.
So,
I just wasn't, I didn't know we had it here.
yeah, it's called member full with signature, right?
Yeah.
So once the data is in the MLS.
You just input the listing like you're gonna.
Yeah.
Yeah, you
listing it,
input the
But you don't have to
listing.
do it off the form, you just do it right there, and then
Yeah.
when you go to print.
So we don't even have to use that other form if we don't.
Not if you don't want to, no.
It's just it's so
Um,
many forms, and I wish it was one form.
We all licensed under AREA.
Pardon me?
We're all licensed under AREA.
Yes.
All right, practicing in this province.
Yes.
Isn't there any way that your entity and AREA could get it together so that we just have like one set of forms?
All I can say is we're working on it. It's not the fastest progress. I mean, the fact that you're with 9 other boards, almost 10 on the same MLS system, that's a start, right? The collective, 13 boards. Ottawa, 5 boards. You got your little islands here and there. Some of them are bigger islands than others. We won't mention Toronto.
Yeah.
So the short answer is kind of, but no guarantees.
Can you show that exactly what she's asking you to do? Or?
It's just like you go into a listing and you're entering your listing, and then you just go to member full with signature, and then you print. It'll look like that with a signature at the bottom.
Yeah, I'm
Instead
gonna
of having to do that.
show, the lady was
Yeah.
asking about this part of it. I'm gonna show that next after the web forms part of it. And by the way, I'm in no rush. My time is your time, so if you think I'm not moving along fast enough because it's 10 to 12, let me know. And then I think the food's coming at noon. We might have to eat at the same time as I'm talking, so
Just do private tutorials.
we'll talk.
Okay. 'Cause I'm
Okay.
really stuck.
I don't know if there's much else on web forms that you don't know. As you probably know, there are add-on services. I can send I can send via email to someone, and it can be one or all of the forms, right? So if you're sending something to the bank or to the mortgage broker or whatever, you can just send them that information that they need on a particular form. There's 2 options at the bottom here. which is read-only or request a read receipt. So you can, depending on who you're sending it to, let's say you're sending it to another team member, or even in some cases the client, you can take off this read-only feature and they'll be able to fill in the form on their system and send it back to you. It currently does not go back into web forms, but if you wanted to, let's talk about verifying some of the client information. You can get them to fill in some of the data and send it back to you, and then it might help, or what have you, right? Request a read receipt. How many of you are familiar with this? Probably everybody. So you know when they've clicked on the link that they're emailed, that they've opened it. You don't know if they've read it and understood it, but you know that they've clicked on the link, which, could be their teenage son for all you know. What else? Okay. Anybody DocuSign? Is everybody, yeah, do you DocuSign and then sign? Yeah. So that's cool. Yeah, different choices. That's fine. It works great. Again, I can't show this to you today, but if you set up your templates in those two programs on what the overlays are, where the signatures go, that'll save you some time later on for the signing piece of it. The other thing I wanted to show you is under Tools. The Sent Email Library shows you what's been sent, when it was sent, when the link expires, and that kind of neat stuff. When it was viewed, you probably all know about that. No, this is good. So it's a good thing it's sort of a confirmation, or if there's a follow-up that you need to do, you can go to the Sent Email Library and see what happened with that particular transaction and that email. Also under Tools, and part of your homework is the Lawyer Library. Okay, I don't have any set up, but there are some forms that have references to a particular lawyer. So if you're using the same lawyer and over again for your transactions, I'd recommend setting up the Lawyer Library, and then you'll see on the form you can actually insert the lawyer's information in there, so you don't have to keep typing their name and address or what have you. And you can obviously have more than one lawyer set up for different scenarios. Let's see here. Okay, now the saved reminder library. Well, let me get this out of the way. The manage email signature, it's not very imaginative, but you can set up for your emails a footnote with your information, right? Your name, your email address, web page perhaps, your tagline. You can put those into the email signature, so you don't have to keep retyping those. There is a request to make this a little spiffier, so you can have hyperlinks and your email address be hyperlinkable, and colors and all that kind of neat stuff, and that's in the works. Let's see here. Just wanted to go into this one. So we'll get into the clauses and phrases. I know your favorite. And is this Form 100? Yeah, Form 100. Everybody knows about this probably, where you can, speaking of dual agency, you can pick and choose what side you're working with. And if it's a dual agent, you click off both and it will change accordingly. Here's that insert lawyers button I was telling you about, this one here. And then there's the insert clauses. Now, like I said earlier, kind of hokey, but it's the best we could do at the time, and we're still working on this. The insert clauses works very similar to the forms, where you pick and choose which clauses you want, depending on the situation. You can search clauses for a particular name, and if it's got the name in the clause, it will show that, as well as you can view by different categories. So when I click on next, he takes what he knows about those clauses and phrases, and he has a bunch of fields that he knows where you have to fill in some information. Now, the only sort of little tip, if you will, that I'll add is you can obviously set dates that the subjects are going to be removed. There is this feature here, which I don't know how many of you know that you can actually add a calendar entry to your calendar, right? So if I can't see it because my bar is for some reason showing it. Let's see here. So you'll notice when I clicked on that little I, it created what they call an iCal or a calendar entry. And if I click on this, it will then put it right into my calendar, right? So I can have a notification or a reminder that this subject is about to come up, due, right? So there may be something that you need to do ahead of time to make sure it's done. Okay? Let's see if this works. Okay, so that'll go into your email, either, in my case I use Outlook, and you can see it repeated the name of the clause up here, and I can embellish that. It automatically put the date and the time, and then again I can change that as I need to. And then if you need a reminder, you can set a reminder. Cool beans. Let's see here. This one also will set an email reminder, but it doesn't put you right into your email. It will actually send it from web forms.
Would that feature be compatible with Google Mail?
Yes, it is, yeah. Anyway, so I can preview clauses, I can insert clauses, I can make the changes here, or I can make the changes on the form, right? But it's kind of a one-way effort. So once I insert the clauses, I don't have those fancy little features of the calendar drop-down or the iCal thing and that kind of neat stuff, right? Okay, somewhere in Schedule A. So here it is here, right? So now I have to highlight what it is I want to change, etc., right? And currently, unfortunately, it doesn't bold or italicize anything in particular, which we've asked for quite a while. It just gives you these underscores, the blank line for you to fill in. Of course, you could print it out and write it in, but you could also do it online. So it looks pretty professional.
On the previous screen too, when you insert clauses, you can move them.
Yes, you can
Yeah,
drag and drop.
very handy.
Good point. Yeah. So, anybody understood that? So, yeah, when you're in that area that I was just in, so go back to edit. Now you can see here I've got the previous ones that I inserted. I can insert more clauses. And again, we talk about the one-way thing. Let's see here. So I'm just going to add one or two of these guys. It's going to keep what you had before. And if you notice when I mouse around, it changes to that little cross again, right? So now I can reorder them into something that might be logical, or more logical than what you selected, right? So you have a chance to change those.
What about those little arrows that bring you up to the words?
Yeah, they do.
Okay.
And we can preview and see what it looks like, and then click insert, and away we go. But like I say, if you do some homework, you can get all your clauses and phrases that you say set up for a condo type of transaction versus a listing transaction and that kind of stuff. Okay, I'm going to go back to Matrix. Any questions about web forms? Great.
So when I know this may be stupid, or you might have already answered it.
No problem.
When I click on
web forms from the listing where you showed you can go in. So mine comes in under Creo web forms, and I'm looking at yours, and it's under web forms, and hers is under different web forms, and yours came up under Creo. It's just,
When you say create, you're
So-
talking about the header at the top?
yes.
This here?
So the template is different, the layout is different than when you,
Yeah, I probably confused you because first of all, I went back and forth between my beta version, which was supposed to have the Realtor load, and version 4, and then version 5. Is that what you're thinking of? Is that where I'm off?
yeah.
Yes.
I guess.
That's
So
it.
then I gotta go to Web Forms Classic with the little bar that
Yes.
goes back to Classic?
Yeah.
Okay.
The one
Now
down.
it makes sense.
Yeah, the one of the downsides of version 4, the classic, is that you have to use the change board in the top left. So if you go outside of the Ortis boards, say Southern Georgia Bay, you have to do the change board up there. But where in version 5, when you create a new transaction kit, you can choose which board to choose from, any board in Ontario. So you can get their data input form, for instance. Chances are good all the provincial forms are the same, but their data input form will be different. Sorry if I confused you.
That's all right. It's easily done.
Okay, data input. Okay, so we talked about web forms and the hopefully coming soon Realtor load, but now let's go back to the way that we've been used to with creating new listings, right? So I guess
You know what I have trouble with is the longitude latitude. Where I'm just working on a new listing, I've got everything preloaded, ready to go. And every time I try to do the latitude longitude, I kind of Google what that is, and I try to
Right.
insert it, but then it sort of
Re-
keeps popping up.
yeah, remind me about the lat and long when we get to there
Okay.
in a sec. Okay, so as you know, we have we have 5 property types, but only 2 forms, right? Where the residential form tries to cover off 4 property types. For today, we're just going to go into residential. As you probably know, we can create with a blank listing. We can also fill from across property, right? So if we're doing what we were doing with the listing agent using a previously expired listing, for instance, or a sold listing from the past, we can type that in here, and it will autofill, very similar to what we've done with web forms, and save you again some typing.
Could we do that from a Southern Georgian Bay listing to our board? Or
No.
No, okay, I didn't think so.
One question, that's actually not a bad question, because when I create a new transaction kit, and I mentioned to you that you can create it from an MLS number or address, if you use an MLS number or address that's on our Ortis matrix, it will go back in time to active solds or expires, right? But if you, let's say, are doing an offer on an active listing out of Southern Georgia Bay, if you type that MLS number here, it will take a look at what's on Realtor.ca and use that data to populate it. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah.
So 2 different feeds into the same kit. So that, I know it works for sure if you enter a Toronto board MLS number. I'm not 100% sure it works with Southern Georgia Bay, but
This was an expired one from them that I picked up that.
oh,
listing.
unfortunately, no. Yeah.
No, okay.
Yeah, so once you get outside the little Ortis group, he doesn't know about solds and expireds because the lady back there knows the boards don't share well with others.
No, don't say well with others, no.
So it's a big sandbox. Okay, let me finish this part of it up, and then we're most of the way through, and then we'll take a break. Is that all right? Okay, nobody's passing out. Good. So yeah, in this case, I used a previous MLS number to auto-populate into my new listing on Matrix, right? And you can see here it does have the address and the legal description and the PID, etc., all filled in for you, right? And then you can start modifying it and all that kind of neat stuff. Another way to start a listing, other than with a blank listing, is to fill from a geo warehouse, right? So if you have a PIN or an address, GeoArrows will look it up and autofill in a few pieces of information, the assessment year, assessment dollar, legal description, and what you see down here at the bottom, right? Unfortunately, what I've seen with GeoArrows that it isn't always accurate. So when I was setting up for this demo today, I chose a pin out of the blue and I got a completely different address. So double check everything, obviously. Don't take it for gospel that every system is accurate.
So do they populate both amount, does the one, say, taking from a previous listing, does that populate more information? I just wasn't clear on that than the Geo Warehouse populating. It's the same
It's
stuff.
about the same, yeah. So I've got a pin here. We'll see how well I
They won't
do.
do room sizes and all that
No,
stuff.
I won't do room sizes yet.
Geo will probably sell the name of it, but,
Yeah. So
It's on title.
I typed in a pin, and I'm going to GeoWarehouse found it, which is a good thing. Then I click on fill, and it will fill in those pieces of detail, right? Again, if you see something on this previous feature of autofill from a previous listing, like I just noticed that assessment roll number isn't brought forward from a previous listing, we can get that added. You just have to email it in to Agnes, and we'll see what we can do. So again, this is another shortcut for you to start a listing from. Let's see here. Save time.
There's no plans to separate out the forms instead of having everything on one form, eh?
No. I know when I was managing web forms, I did a lot of forms design, and it is normally easier to separate them out. Less confusing at the end of the day. But the way some of the forms designer works is as well, 80% of it's the same between this property type and that property type. I just have to have that little section. But it doesn't always work well because there's some overlaps and things like that. The one.
A lot of rhyme and reason for something.
The one minor thing here that I wanted to point out is this little field here called Property Panorama. Some of the boards in the Ortis group subscribe to Property Panorama, and it's kind of cool in that if, depending on the price break that you have on your listing, this Property Panorama will create virtual tours for you from the photos that you upload, right? So it may not be as spiffy keen as the $250 version or whatever you pay, but it's definitely free and it works quite well. So if you upload, I think the minimum is 10 photos, it creates a nice little property panorama virtual tour, looks kind of neat, and it gets uploaded to Korea Lickety Split. And the best part is it's free.
Where was that?
On the listing under the Realtor Brokerage Information tab, top right. Okay. One thing I was going to point out that's coming to a theater near you is Matrix Mobile. How many of you use the Matrix Mobile? Right? So a few of you use it. You'll be able to modify your listings from the Matrix Mobile in the next couple weeks. So if you have a change to the comments or you see a little editing thing that you need to do, you can be able to do that from your phone or your tablet. Again, saving you a little trip into the desktop. Okay, so when it comes to marketing your properties, there's a couple different ways that your listing shows up, right? Or that you can present your listing in the outside world. All of you probably have a web page. Do any of you not have a search property button? Everybody's got a search property? Yeah? Really? Well, the next part's going to be boring for the rest of you.
I don't know if I do. How do I know that?
So if you go to your web page, there's lots of people that have, ability to search for active listings on their website. So I was going to show you a couple of ways you could do that, but if you've already got it, this is a little bit redundant. Obviously, you're going to be working with a web programmer on a lot of this stuff. I mentioned earlier that the upload from Matrix to Realtor.ca is every 90 minutes, right? Realtor.ca, just like the matrix system, is dynamic. So as data is posted, it's automatically available. One of the things that a few people don't know is that our friends at CREA are a little bit more open about, except for their lawyers, are a little bit more open about sharing the data that's up there, right? So my old boss, he'd been around since dirt. He said, when it comes to marketing properties and not sharing, what's the worst that's going to happen? Somebody's going to sell a property, right? So one of the little things I wanted to point out to you as part of this little part is that you can go to Realtor.ca. You can do a search in a whole bunch of different ways, obviously, and narrow down the area that you want to market or you want to have a presence, if you will. In my case, I just took the city of Barrie. But the one little detail I wanted to show you, and again, you can customize this to any which way that you want, including checking off this open house button, right? And you'll see this URL, this fancy dancy little thing at the top here. If you copy and paste that and send it to your web programmer, they can put that on your web page and it will start displaying the listings in that area, right? And I think it works properly with open house where you don't even have to have the date. It just shows you the open houses that are coming up in the future. Okay, so again, if you're a low budget type of person and doesn't want to pay somebody for recreating the wheel, right, reinventing the wheel, you can copy and paste this Realtor.ca link. You can do it for commercial listings, and I've seen that. You can do it for a certain neighborhood with a certain price range, whatever you want to specialize in or the area that you want to market in. I better log out of Trudy here.
Do my work.
I am going to log in as another realtor. So hang on a split second. Because there's a couple things I wanted to show you on Matrix to do similar things. So Matrix also has this ability to create a hyperlink and a search properties link automatically that you can plug into your web page, right? And it's under My Matrix. And settings, and you'll notice at the top here, bottom here, it says IDX configuration. I don't have anything for prizes, but anybody know what IDX stands for?
Information Data Exchange.
Internet Data Exchange. Okay, there's a prize. Real estate tends to be a lot of acronyms. IDX is one of them, invented quite a while ago when the internet started to become more than popular. And that Internet Data Exchange means that a broker with listings that they have, active listings that they have, will share with other brokers on any other website, right? So it's an approval process at the MLS level where, Joe Broker says, yeah, no, I don't mind somebody else marketing my listings because I'm going to get probably a commission, right? So that's called IDX. And it's what I call a subset of the full MLS data, right? So when we go to Matrix, we've got everything under the sun there that we know about, realtor remarks, commission, expiry dates. We got all sorts of neat stuff. But when it comes to marketing active listings, it's a subset. So we're not necessarily broadcasting that information out to the rest of the world. So Matrix has the ability to create that link. I'm going to create an IDX page. I'm going to select, it's going to be a search type of IDX link I'm going to create. I could also do a search based on just my listings if I wanted to. And it can be not only my active listing, but also my office's active listings or my brokerages if you're part of a bigger broker. You can also do a map search. The new Matrix version 7 came along with an IDX that is responsive design, which means that it works on a tablet or a smartphone or what have you. So if somebody went to your webpage and did a search for properties, it would fit nicely. You can see here there's already got a separated one for commercial, open house, and that kind of stuff. You can set it to a specific map area. Again, we talked about what neighborhood you want to market yourself in, so you can set the map area that you want to zoom in on, and then enable the IDX. And I click Save here, you see that it sets up this URL that is specific to you, specific to what your selections are, and all that other neat kind of stuff that you copy and paste and email to your web programmer, right? And then they put a search button on there, and it will look something like this. Now, I did some pretty broad things, but as you can see here, I didn't have to get my web programmer to do all of this dirty work. Matrix did it all for me, right? So the search button, if I was to,
Where's this gonna show up?
on your web page.
On my webpage, okay.
Yeah. Now, so it's got its pros and cons, as you can probably guess. Again, I didn't set a neighborhood, but if I had, it would narrow down and show that on the web page. It comes with a map on the left and the property on the right, and some of the gory details that we actively want to market. Okay, so that's an option.
Is there a list of what brokers participate in the IDX?
There's probably a shorter list of who do not.
Okay, yeah.
We'd have to ask Agnes for that. I don't know that off the top of my head. In the Ortis group of 9 boards, the one board that's kind of off is the Guelph board. So it's like maybe less than a handful actually participate, right?
So within a board though, can't certain brokers opt out of it?
Yes, absolutely, yeah. But in Guelph, the culture is, I don't want to play,
Yeah.
right? Niagara just last year went and turned that all around where they did a dog and pony show and everybody participates. So
You can't
basically,
assume you're gonna get all the listings.
no, you can't. And
Unless
that,
you know all the brokers in your area participate.
exactly, exactly. So that's a quick and dirty. And like I said, just like Realtor.ca, we just copy and paste that. We give that to our programmer, and all of a sudden you've got a nice area to on your webpage to search and report to back to your consumer, I should say, for free, right? So the price is right. It may not be perfect. In other words, if you have a third party like a Lone Wolf or what are they called? Real estate webmasters. There's probably 20 or 30 web page programmers out there that will do it for you, but for a lot more money, obviously. But one of the things they can do with data feed is customize it to any which way you want, right? So you want your mugshot over here instead of over there, and all this neat stuff. There's all sorts of customizing they can do, but time is money, and so they charge accordingly. Can you say question? Okay. So when I say data feed, I use the acronym is called RETS, which is Real Estate Transaction Standard. So third parties apply for access to the MLS, right? And they decide early on whether they're going to be an IDX type of vendor, like Real Estate Webmasters, and they're given permission, and they are charged some money for that access and all that kind of stuff. But for an IDX vendor, they get the same level of detail that Realtor.ca gives them, right? But again, they can customize it. So yeah, I'm trying to convince the Barrie board to produce a list of all of these web page providers. So in case you're not happy with the one you currently have, you can maybe refer to some of these other ones. And in that referral, of course, is some samples that you can use. They have different features and things like that. But generally, it's the same. A consumer is looking for property for sale, and they're maybe looking for you. So one of the things I mentioned was that from Matrix, after you've entered a listing, 90 minutes later, it's on Realtor.ca. One of the downstream data feeds from Realtor.ca is something called DDF, another acronym. Data Distribution Facility, right? It works exactly like we were just talking about with IDX, where the broker has to go to RealtorLink, to their dashboard, and set an approval basis on what data will follow down from Realtor.ca. Okay, so it's not any more or less data than, I shouldn't say that, it's not any less data, but it's actually more data. So a technology provider that's getting a DDF feed goes beyond the MLS boundaries, right? So this data feed that we're talking about here is only the ones on Ortus, only the listings on Ortus. But if I get a data feed from CREA, from DDF, I can do across the country if I wanted to as a technology provider. Okay, now those third parties pay for that privilege, obviously. Data is worth something. So depends on your market, right, and what you want to portray out there to the consumers, you can actually get a data distribution data feed that is across the country, right? And then some of the franchisors have data feeds like Remax and Century 21, Royal LePage. They get data across the country. So again, active listings. And it's worth something to them to do that. But if you have just an individual web page programmer that you want, you can set them up as a technology provider for free. And the sort of the same effort goes where they're sent a URL that says, here, use this, right? I won't go into the DDF part because it's kind of goes sideways. Let's see here. Is there any questions about these IDX feeds, data feeds? Okay, cool beans. Hang on a sec. I was going to turn that off. By the way, from here you can make your portal, right? So your client portal uses this as well, or can use this. So you can set up a matrix portal, so for your clients to come to go through via their email, and it uses this IDX feed for part of it. Okay. I gotta just log out from Mark. Oh, I'm sorry. I did ask who I shouldn't use. Okay, so I'm going to move on to the next controversial one, which is always fun and games. So recently, we implemented at Barrie a showing service called Showing Time. Now, fortunately, the other 8 boards that are part of Ortus use it and don't have an issue with the workflow. But what we found with Barrie after the fact was that most of the brokers' offices in Barrie prefer that the office do the showing requests, not the agent-to-agent kind of stuff. Okay, so we're still getting used to this concept and we're still working on it. But the good news is, just this last week we did a test with Quick Office Commander. How many of you are familiar with Quick Office Commander? Back office program?
Yeah.
Couple, good. So I didn't do this, but we just tested this with Quick Office Commander. So when you're looking at a listing in Matrix, at the bottom of the listing is a showing request. Now this particular listing has scheduled a showing through Showing Time, but if the office has elected to have their preference as Quick Office Commander, it'll say request through Quick Office Commander, right? And in that case, the showing request goes straight into the front office's computer system, and then they can deal with it. Now, for the rest of you that are using Lone Wolf, we did try for like over 2 months to get them to work properly with Matrix, but we couldn't, and they gave up. And so we've got another request in with Matrix to do the setup for Lone Wolf the same as we had on Fusion, and the same as it is on the Toronto board Stratus, which is we have to keep track of their Lone Wolf offices that are clients, and then we'll be able to set up a smart link that again will put them through straight into the Lone Wolf showing system. Okay, so that's in the works, but if you haven't tried Showing Time, try it. It's pretty cool. It's got some really nice features, which is, tracking who's coming into the property, what their feedback might be, and that kind of neat stuff, right? It's probably similar to Quick Office Commander and Lone Wolf. I'm not sure. Okay. I don't think we have to we don't have to talk about hot sheets, right? You guys all know about that. If you're looking at somebody else's listing, because I know your own are perfect, there is one little icon on the left here, which is hard to see, but it looks like a little yellow triangle. It says report data error. If you see something on a listing that isn't quite, correct, you can actually report a data error back to Agnes, right? And she'll get that fixed PDQ, right? So you can indicate what the subject is. It could be other problem, it could be a duplicate listing, discrepancy one way or the other, and then what the concern is, and that'll go straight into Agnes's inbox and she'll deal with it. So you can report a date. She wanted me to convey that to you, right? It's okay to do it. Nobody will know except you.
So nobody knows you're a snitch.
Well, I didn't call it a snitch. We're calling it data quality control, right? I mean, if you like a price discrepancy, that's a big one, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah. 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 That's big. So, now, I don't know if this is off topic or not, but before we could have the same property listed under two categories. Do we still do that?
Yeah, so the question is whether you can have a property listed under two property types, and the short answer is yes.
Yeah, so do we have the primary one, we choose which one is the primary, and then the second one is...
Right, and then we use this field called Alt MLS number to track or cross-reference it. So it isn't unheard of to have a farm listing that's also a residential listing, depending on the person who's looking at it, right?
Right.
Selling it, yeah.
Okay.
So,
So you would put a Toronto number in there.
and we do keep track of the Toronto numbers too. So there's certain situations where the listing is showing in Ortis and on Stratus. And then
So where do you do that?
In-
Because I'm gonna be putting this on Trev, the one I've got coming up right now, on Trev by next week, so how does that work?
that's a darn good question. So the question is, where do I put this Alt MLS number when I'm doing data entry? And it's right there in front of me.
Okay, so once I've got it on Trev, I go back in to edit that.
Yes.
My original one, okay.
Right? So if you are doing double entry and putting something on Stratus and on Ortis, then you get it on Stratus, get the MLS number, put it on here, and then we can track it and back and forth, right? The key is to keeping everything in sync. Stats get a little bit thrown off, depending on how many there are and who's reporting what. But
Is Realtor.ca ever gonna give you the option of choosing which listing goes to Realtor.ca? Because if you wanna put it on, it used to be when we interboarded to Toronto, it only would show one listing. But because most people are dual members, you have the same listing show with the Toronto number and the same listing showing with the Barrie number. How come they don't give you the choice to say, I only want to display my Barrie listing on Realtor.ca, I don't want to display Toronto?
With a different, like if it's a Toronto one, is it a different number?
It's a different number, but I mean, you should be able to have the choice. Realtor.ca should be able to have a selection, but you have, which is my.
Realtor.ca will go there anyway. Your primary membership?
No, not if they gave you the option to change it, that's what I'm saying. They should give you the choice.
Realtor.ca was Canada.
It is, it is. But why do I need to have the same listing show twice?
yeah, I agree that
Yes, it
I
does.
agree.
Well, it does on the Toronto board and it does it on our.
Only when they were interboarded were they not showing twice. But if you're a member, they show twice. It's just something, I don't know why they wouldn't give you that option to choose.
The Ortis matrix system does. Unfortunately, though, you have to call into the board to do that.
What they're...
Agnes, yes.
Even though she doesn't have anything to do with Toronto?
Yeah.
Well, I guess that's the question, whether Stratus has the same feature, right? I don't know. I do not know.
Why would doubt it? They're in the dark ages, so. Don't hold back, no, I'm not holding back.
So, yeah, so if you call up Agnes, she can disable the upload of the listing to Realtor.ca, period, right? So it'll still show elsewhere, but not on Realtor.ca double. Again, we'd have to ask our Toronto friends to see if they have the same feature. There has been talk about I'll use the word releasing this feature, that the board staff doesn't have to do it, but you could do it, where it says send to Korea is yes or no, and the default is always at yes, right? They also have another feature where you can set each listing to suppress it from going through DDF, right? And that's this one here. Some realtors work in different ways, and I agree that I don't like the duplicates either. We have the same issue with members in offices. Some offices show up 10 times because 10 different MLS boards uploaded, right? Drives me nuts. And of course, Korea, who's responsible, takes no responsibility.
Hey, Ernie, sorry, how did you say to suppress the duplicates? You call somebody?
Yeah, you can just call Agnes or MLS@bdar.ca and ask her nicely, and she'll
MLS.
at bdar.ca.
Oh.
And again, I don't know who wants to take on the responsibility of finding out if Stratus does the same thing. I'll make a note.
I met somebody there the other day.
I already mentioned that for web forms, if your broker has a logo that they want to appear on forms, they can email us. If they want their own broker forms, I mentioned the conveyancing form. They can also have their own clauses and phrases, right? So the lady was asking about seeing some nice clauses and phrases set up in a transaction. There's nothing stopping you from borrowing those and using them for your own purposes. But if your broker has some preferred clauses and phrases, they can also get that set up for web forms so that you don't have to do that copy and paste. It'll be there right away when you create a kit. Okay. So, back to the PowerPoint. All right, so this is the miscellaneous slide. Have any of you had an offer where the buyer wishes to pay in cryptocurrency yet? I just saw that the other day.
Really?
Yeah. Crazy? Okay, so everybody knows what cryptocurrency is?
Well, no, but not exactly. It's like air.
It is. Well, I hate to break it to you, but just like the internet, it's not a passing fad, okay? I can't remember who said that, but it was vice president somewhere. So cryptocurrency is a type of currency in a way. Probably when some of you were kids, you had playing cards or baseball cards, and you thought it was worth something more to the other guy, right? Well, that's something physical that you can sort of predetermine what it's worth. With cryptocurrency, it's a digital currency, so it's in the cloud, if you will. It's in the internet. It's something that a bunch of people have agreed it's worth so much, and it's just like a stock market type of stock. It can go up in value, it can go down in value, right? And just like the word currency from different nations, there's different types of cryptocurrencies all over the map, and some of them specialize in certain types of fields, some of them around the globe. The most common that you've heard of course, are Bitcoin and maybe Ethereum, and those have a value to them, right? And you buy into the value with your credit card or whatever from your bank in the country that you're in, and you can sell them, okay? So it's not unheard of to, and you'll probably see more of this, where somebody will want to pay in cryptocurrency. And while this may or may not be an advantage to the seller, and in fact, if you follow the value of these cryptocurrencies, it could be a huge advantage. But on the flip side, it's also a risk.
Have you ever heard of anybody ever selling and having that money back in their bank account? Because I haven't.
Yes. In fact, I don't know if you guys ever met Jeff. Jeff, I can't remember his last name. Yeah, who used to work here. He made a little bit of money late last year. And same thing, he bought in. I could have bought in at 900, but just like most of us techies, it's a great after the fact idea. But yeah, there are people that are coming and going. Yes. Yep, exactly. Exactly.
I'm from the sixties, I'd rather buy
Bank
into
account says
it.
it is taxable.
Just gonna say, I just sold a house and their deposit, which is a couple $100,000, is coming from the Bitcoin.
Oh, yeah.
But my sellers had nothing to do with that. That was a broker. So
Right.
they said it took 10 days for them to cash in the money. And I guess,
Oh, that's interesting.
yeah, so there was a 10-day waiting period, but again, we had nothing to do with it. It was strictly.
That's very interesting, because one of the huge advantages of cryptocurrencies, especially when it comes to real estate, is that it's within an hour the money changes hands, right? So there's not this waiting period that, but again, it's new, so I could see where somebody would be like going, I think I'll wait.
I know nothing about the process. I just understood through the broker that there was a 10-day waiting period, but the money, the funds were being transferred.
Yep,
So.
it does have to come in and out of a bank, yeah.
Right.
There's an article in Current Maclean's that explains how a fellow sold his Bitcoin that he had. And the faster you want to sell it, the more money you have to offer somebody to sell it for you.
Oh, yes. Yeah, it's a whole, well, it's an underlying technology, just like the internet. Most of us don't know how it actually works, but cryptocurrency is the same thing. But one of the other advantages besides the turnover is the audit trail that it produces, right? Which is cast in internet stone, if you will, that once a transaction has been agreed or approved and things have changed hands, it's built into the logic that you can go back and always find out who did what when.
We would need FinTrack.
Yeah, how does that work with FinTrack?
Well, it's funny you should bring that up about FinTrack. It's because FinTrack hasn't acknowledged Bitcoin yet. And not that any of you guys would do this, but one of the reasons that Bitcoin has become popular is with the underground world, right? Because it's not, how do I say this? It's not trackable by the government, right? CRA doesn't know about it. FinTrack doesn't know about it. It's out there, and it's worth something back and forth. There's a huge development in Dubai where they'll easily accept Bitcoin, no problem. In fact, they advertise that. There was a property in Saskatchewan early on, Bitcoin. There was a property sold, and Bitcoin was the money, if you will, right? So just so you know, it's a bit risky. It will settle down sooner or later. As soon as the governments and the banks catch on and set in the regulations about who can do what, when, where, then you'll see it become popular.
So how many, under the category cryptocurrency, how many
Currencies?
options are there? Yeah.
Countless. I couldn't even count. All I know is there's Bitcoin and Ethereum are the most popular,
I've heard of Bitcoin.
right? And there's, Google that. They're coming up with new ones every day. There's obviously, just like real money, there's scams going on every day. Because it's a business, I'll call it a computer logic kind of thing, there's a risk of them being hacked, and there's that kind of thing.
So,
But again,
wait
just
till
a
the CRA gets their
heads
little
up.
hands on that, man.
Right. The Russians have come up with a crypto ruble, so they're
I'm
not,
not surprised.
yeah, so they're out there. Which kind of segues me into the next little miscellaneous topic, which is to do with passwords. A couple things. As you know, unfortunately, the MLS tries to centralize your MLS ID and password, right? But that's just the tip of the iceberg of what you do every day. Obviously, you have bank accounts, you have shopping accounts, you have all sorts of neat stuff. One of the things that Robert and I recommend is that you have something called a password manager. One of them is M-Secure, which is around $30, worth every penny. And the free one is called KeepPass that I use. It's free, but it's also a little more techy. But M-Secure allows you to sync your passwords in a very, very secure encrypted manner. From your phone to your desktop to your laptop to your tablet. And so it keeps track of that. And so if you're ever lost for an ID or password, you can log in and get that information. And I highly recommend it, just because I'm sick and tired of seeing little yellow stickies on the computer desk, right? So, and there's getting to be so many of them. And nowadays, clarity, security aside, The password strength that you want is so secure that nobody in their right mind can remember them, right? And one of the deficiencies I see with Clarity Security is that he wants you to record a memorable password, right? If we took a look, we would probably find, the word password, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, or something silly like that on the system. And you can't copy and paste. So the Clarity Consulting login screen is meant for MLSs. It's popular around North America, but it doesn't let you copy and paste any of these passwords. You actually have to type it. So to me, it kind of a little bit defeats the purpose. But for everywhere else, right, whether it be your bank or whether it be Amazon or shopping channels or whatever, your email, I would recommend a very strong, secure password. I'm not sure about MSecure, but KeePass lets you generate a password on the fly, right? It does? Yeah. So you can say, okay, I want a 10-character alphanumeric special characters type of password, and it will generate one for you that you can set up for whoever you're setting up an account with. So that's one thing. And then the other thing that I'd recommend in the way of security is something called two-factor authentication. How many of you are familiar with that? A couple of you? Awesome. Okay, so yeah, so if you log into, like in my case, if I log into my Amazon account, if I log into my Gmail account from someplace new, it sends me a text on my phone, and it gives me a 6 or 8-digit number that I have to type in to wherever I'm trying to log into, right? So the chances are even better, two-factor authentication, that nobody's going to have my cell phone and my user ID and password at the same time, right? I did, in my one experiences with eBay where somebody was trying to get in to my account, and because I had two-factor authentication on, some guy from some Asian country I won't mention was trying to log in, and it was telling me that, hey, this person is trying to log in. He couldn't get past the two-factor authentication, so it was great, right? So I felt a little bit more secure. So I'd highly recommend that. Okay, so Gmail has it built in. Amazon has it built in. There's tons of them. I don't think any of the banks have it built in yet. Not yet. So
What they do is have a
So
second
when you were
password.
saying N-secure, or is it?
M as in mother?
M.
Yep. MSecure, look that one up.
Let's also log into our, if we're logging into Matrix, they've got the double secure, and they'll send you a note on your Gmail, asking if you're using it, and then they give you a code.
Oh, is that right?
Matrix, okay. If you're using someone else's computer that Matrix or VDR is not familiar with, they will send you a Gmail asking you if you're using it. Then you answer, yes, it's me, and then they send you a code, and you have to use that code in order to access your Matrix or your Prairie Regional stuff. So it does exist.
I haven't seen that yet. I'd have to look for that.
It's just Gmail.
So it's just with your Gmail account?
Yeah.
Oh, I see.
I have it
When you
with
register
Gmail.
with your Gmail email, it does ask for
Yeah,
confirmation?
if I'm going from my phone to my computer or something, are you trying to log into another computer?
Oh,
Is that what
okay.
you're asking? Yeah.
Okay.
And it gives you a number,
That's not the
verify
board,
the
that's the
number.
name.
Perfect, yeah, and that's a good example of two-factor authentication, right?
So we do have a good.
Yeah, yeah.
It's through Gmail though.
But only if you have a Gmail account on your Matrix?
I don't know, mine's through Gmail, like it's through, I guess it's Google.
I've seen it,
I
yeah.
guess it'd be Google,
Well,
actually.
Google has the two-factor, and they also have a thing called Google Authenticator. Google.
But that's a good question for
I
me.
had it until I switched phones and now I can't get
Every
it.
single website will generate 6-digit codes that they change every 10 minutes.
Yeah.
And that way, you do have to mention. But for your mail, for sure. 'Cause somebody-
And is that on the Ortis Matrix or another MLS?
I only have it on my, anytime I try to get into my computer or my phone from Gmail or anything, I've never seen it through Matrix, I just.
I'll have to double check. I've kind of seen it, but I'm not sure if it's from the Ortis Matrix or somewhere else.
Phones, I've lost it. So.
One thing to comment about the Clarity security system is, since Barrie is gone with that, Clarity is, of course, managing the passwords, right? So when we set up a new user, it goes to Matrix 15 minutes later, and then 15 minutes later it goes into Clarity, and then from that point on, Clarity manages the passwords, right? And if you change your passwords on Clarity, then it flows through to the rest of the world, right? One of the things that we haven't turned on yet, just because we're still settling in, is Clarity does keep track of where you are, where you're coming from, what device you're on, and how many times you're logging in, and all kinds of neat stuff. And there's some thresholds that the Barrie board will eventually set. For instance, if you log in Vancouver and Barrie at the same time, it'll put a little check mark beside your name, and if you get 3 check marks, it might prompt you for a new password, or it might just give you a warning to say, I'm not sure how you managed to get 3,000 miles ago so fast. But yeah, this is coming sooner or later, this threshold, this Clarity security extra feature that will slow down somebody sharing their password. Okay, but for now, you're kind of safe, but it is logging all of that neat stuff. Next.
I got a question for after.
Okay. So yeah, anywhere your privacy might be compromised, like your email and that kind of stuff, you want to put on 2-factor authentication. Yes, it can be inconvenient, but it gives you peace of mind that if someone is trying to copy or get into your system, it's a good thing to have.
Ernie,
Hey.
you can only use that if you're on Gmail, right?
No.
You can use it on anything else? if
Yeah,
that
I
goes-
believe Outlook has it, I believe, and I'm not sure about the other guys. Let's see here. I'll probably go off topic if I talk about this. There's a service out there called PWN, which if you give them your your email address, it'll tell you whether your email address has been compromised.
Oh.
Right? I just got an email yesterday, actually, saying that I'm one of 180,000 people that may have their email address and password compromised.
Does that come from the Russians?
Yeah, well, Koreans, Russians, I don't know.
Oh, I'm Ukrainian, so I'm,
So, again, it's a slightly off topic of what I was going to show you next, but it is possible, obviously. In some of the simplest sites that you would never think have been compromised, right? So if you ever subscribe to Yahoo, they got huge breach there a couple of times, not once, but a couple. Equifax? What was the name of the? Equifax, yeah. My son got caught in that, and he's in Canada. So, just an FYI, right?
huh. That's interesting. So this PWN can help you determine that for you.
Correct.
Okay.
Let's see here, control click. And the last thing I was going to show you that I've been asked to show you is if you're familiar with Simcoe County's mapping system, they do have listings on there now, right? So listings that come not only from Ortis, but also from Southern Georgia Bay and Lakelands, right? So I clicked on menu and I'm going to go to local real estate. And you can see all the little red dots. And I can drill down and just like that, filter like I could usually, right? And this is fairly new. So just an FYI. Oops. It took me to the wrong spot. That's not where I wanted.
It's across the street from Hawkins. That's where I live.
Is that right?
That's at the corner of my
Really?
street, yeah.
Did you know it was for sale?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Good one.
Just a 2
Can you
weeks.
start, so you go to Simcoe,
I know that house.
Simcoe,
Maps.simcoecounty.ca/public. And let me just double check something. Yeah, there still is a link on your system. by the way.
So Creedmoor.
Let's see if I got this right. Links.
Right at the bottom, I think. There you go.
No,
Last one.
it would help if I logged in as a,
County of Simcoe, isn't it? Yep, that's the one, Simcoe County mapping, right, the last one in your list on the left. Oh, no, sorry, that's the square one, sorry.
just a sec, sorry. I jumped to a Brantford member.
You know too many people.
Yeah. This is the last thing, I promise, then you guys can take the rest of the day off. Okay. So, links. And I'm pretty sure if I do a Simcoe. Yeah.
Yep, that's.
Yeah, so that's the one. I thought there was a shortcut on the dashboard, but
Okay, so can you do exactly what you did next, before it took those dots to come up?
I clicked on menu, and then I clicked on local real estate, and then I can drill down.
You can type in a property address at the top too, and it'll jump right to the property address, wow.
And how fast do they get that on that site from our board?
Is that from Realtor.ca?
Well, some of these, for whatever reason, link to Realtor.ca. The commercial listings have more information than the residential ones. Obviously, there's no solds on there or expireds. If I type in, oh, I don't think this will work yet, right? Pools Road.
I know it will. Okay, listen up, this is coming up, you guys. Just a little, you know, might as well take advantage of it. It's coming, it'll be up like Thursday, Friday, okay?
Yeah. So if this property was for sale, it would show on here. And as you can see the outline of the lot and that kind of neat stuff. And from there, you can do different things. So that was the last thing I was going to show you. If you have, like I mentioned, bugs, right, or things you want to talk about, send them to mls@bdar.ca and we'll see what we can do. No promises. Some things are obvious we can fix. Some of them take a committee of 9 boards to figure out. And then if it's a CREA issue, then it's an act of parliament. Okay. So
Thank you.
that's all I had.